Hey friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2015 Jeep Renegade. It's all new this year and the first vehicle to truly be built with Jeep and Fiat together on the same assembly line. And well, we're here in the shopping mall parking lot where arguably most of these will spend their lifetimes. But don't fear, we plan on getting it dirty.
The 2015 Jeep Renegade represents many firsts for the brand. For starters, it's the first Jeep to be sold in North America, which is manufactured on another continent. Built in Italy, the Jeep Renegade shares the assembly line with the new Fiat 500X compact crossover. In fact, both the 500X and the Renegade share their chassis underneath as well as their powertrains. Styling, however, is all Jeep, with nothing visual shared with anything else. Right up front is a familiar family resemblance with slotted grille and round headlamps. Away from its face, the Renegade moves forward with entirely new styling DNA for the brand, with angular forms in its roofline. The rear view has plenty of visual drama too, with bold taillight lenses emblazoned with an X. Our Sport base model had black plastic cladding along its lower extremities to protect for off-road expedition in expected class form. As ours was optioned with the Power and Air group, it also had 16-inch alloy wheels over the standard Steelies. Like the exterior, the Renegade's cabin has a lot going on with design and style. Bold and well-accentuated forms are found in the design of the dash, center console, door panels, and even the seats themselves. Reminders that you're in a Jeep are found everywhere you look, with lots of logos and thematic detail that play into the sense of adventure you have ahead. Even the instrument cluster seems to be splashed with mud in fun fashion. As ours was an entry-level sport, the interior materials and technical content are on the simpler side, though the black and sandstone two-tone color combination gives it an upscale feel. Controls and switchgear are logically laid out and feel of a decent quality.
I just love it when they give us a plain entry-level vehicle that's very similar to what most people actually buy. I like the leather, I like all the bells and whistles that come in the fully loaded vehicles, but this gives me a chance to really sample and feel what most people actually buy. And so what I've got here is a pretty high quality cloth on these base seats, base audio system, very simple to use, and actually has a pretty decent sound quality. But best of all, the trim, the feel of the materials, and the overall fit and finish in here is every bit as good as you'd expect for a car that costs $10,000 or $15,000 more.
The rear seats fold down in a 60-40 split with relative ease for a near flat load floor, which is what you buy this for, right? Once they're down, you'll have 50.8 cubic feet of cargo area in a pretty tall space at that.
Rear seat space is more than adequate back here for a compact SUV. Headroom, very good. I've got about 5 or 6 inches above my head and I'm just under 6 feet tall. Legroom, not bad either. Now these seats, they're not all the way back, they're not all the way forward, so you're sort of seeing the middle ground right here. And seating position, high enough to where you don't feel like you're sitting down in the vehicle. There are a couple things missing, however, namely a fold down armrest, and also it would be nice to have vents back here for the HVAC.
If there's anything initially off-putting about the Renegade's interior, it's getting your seating position dialed into a happy place. Not sure why that is, it just takes a while to find it. The other thing worth noting is the abnormally large A-pillars that do cut into your outward visibility to some degree.
You know, it is pretty cute when it's all clean here in the shopping mall parking lot, but now it's time to get it dirty. Now, because this is not an all-wheel drive model, this is front-wheel drive, we're not going to do the full battery of off-road craziness we tend to do with vehicles that might say trail rated on the fender, but instead, I'm going down the washboard gravel road out here in the desert. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but believe it or not, this can be a lot more challenging than even some of our off-road courses we do, particularly on a car-based crossover like this. And that's because this rutted, rough surface with loose gravel can be just as big a challenge on the chassis to show how well put together, how well tuned, and how solid it really is. Because this ribbed surface can cause vibration, it can cause rattling in the chassis, it can cause all sorts of rattling here on the interior. So what am I finding so far? Well, I'm finding that The interior seems to be buttoned together pretty well. I'm not getting any rattling with the trim, not in the door frames. But what I am finding is the front suspension and steering has a little bit more rumpity thump and rattle than I'd like to have in a vehicle that says Jeep on the hood.
Suspension is fully independent with McPherson struts up front, and at the rear are coil springs with a strut-link layout. Noted in light of our chassis comments is the fact that four-wheel drive models do come with heavier-duty suspension bits, which may contribute to a more solid experience.
That said, the ride out here is reasonably well isolated. Aside the noisiness with the chassis, it's not too stiff. It's not beating me to death by any means, and the stability control does a pretty good job of arresting some of the slide and yaw that I would get around these gravel corners. As I pull it into a corner here, I can feel it just sort of kicking in a little bit with the brakes to keep this thing from coming around on me.
The front-wheel drive Renegade has 6.7 inches of ground clearance, which is a little less than the four-wheel drive model, but more than most compact cars. It has standard hill start assist, which is handy out here, especially with the manual transmission.
Now, even though this isn't really an off-roady version of this vehicle, you can take it off the road onto a little bit of a trail atmosphere. It's got enough ground clearance that it's going to get you pretty much where you want to go, as long as you're not really going off on the Rubicon.
Under the hood of our Renegade is a 1.4-liter turbocharged multi-air engine sourced from Fiat, which has 160 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque. It comes exclusively with a 6-speed manual transmission. It'll run on regular unleaded, but premium is recommended for full performance.
Woo! Woo! Little mud there. Hee-ya! One thing I gotta say is this 1.4-liter turbocharged engine is really just a lot of fun, especially when you're playing with this thing out here on the back roads. It revs freely, it's happy to play, and it's very refined for a 4-cylinder engine. Power, not super fast, but it certainly isn't gutless by any means. It's just right, I think. The only problem with it is it's only available with the manual transmission. Now, I'm fine with that, but if you wanted an automatic in this thing, you're forced up into the 2.4-liter Tiger Shark engine. Not quite as fun, that engine. So if you like a nice, fun, spirited motor, this 1.4 is the way to go. You just have to deal with the manual.
The EPA rates the 2015 Jeep Renegade front-wheel drive with the 1.4-liter engine at 24 mpg city, 31 mpg highway with a 27 mpg combined rating. In our week with the Renegade, we observed 30 miles per gallon combined average, well above what was promised.
As I'm collecting my final thoughts here, I think my big takeaway is that while the front-wheel drive model here does make a nice affordable choice for somebody who, say, lives on a dirt road or goes out in rural areas a lot, needs a little bit of extra ground clearance, something a bit more rugged, say, than your average compact sedan, I think that it would really do Jeep a lot of good as a brand to just make all-wheel drive standard on vehicles like this, just like Subaru does, because this thing says Jeep all over it. It's got all the imagery. I just think it'd be really cool if that was backed up with standard capability of all-wheel drive. Rounding it up for the Jeep Renegade, whether you like the styling or whether maybe you don't, I think we can all agree it looks better with a fresh coat of Mother Earth on it, doesn't it? Now, as we look at the specs, as you can see, priced very reasonably here. We are front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive costs a little bit more, and if you add an automatic with a larger engine, you're a little bit more still. But as it stands here with the manual, fuel economy was quite impressive, I thought. Now, as we look at the stars, we talked about some of the areas where it didn't score so well, mainly to do with the chassis, which was a little bit rough and noisy out there on that gravel road. But all in, we're at 4 stars for the week. Not bad at all. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride.